A couple years ago, a close friend, Ashley, started a long-distance relationship with a guy, Chris. He has been really good to her, and after meeting in person a few times, they decided to move in together. I was super happy for her as she had a few bad relationships over the years and it was nice to see her in a healthy one. That joy faded the last couple months before she moved a few states over to be with him. The issue isn't her moving, but that she repeatedly joked about having a baby from Chris. At first, I accepted it as jokes, but over time I realized Ashley was serious. For context, Ashley has 2 children from a previous relationship, ages 10 and 12. Chris absolutely doesn't want kids. He told her this at the start, and any time she hinted possibly wanting more, he shot it down, saying it was a deal breaker. Now, Chris is more than willing to accept her children as her own, because he loves her, and after meeting her kids, them as well. He's accepted that they are a package deal with her, and since they are at an age where they are semi-independent, it's not an issue for him. To me, Chris is a real bro for taking on her kids without issue. Hearing Ashley say she wants a baby out of him, one way or another, bothered me to no end. It's hard enough to find a partner that treats you well and accepts children that aren't their own. To find one that does and then talk about plotting to force a baby seems gross and manipulative. Before her move, I had sat down with Ashley, trying to talk sense into her. At first she resisted, but finally it seemed she understood how shitty it would be. After I felt like she had understood, I put the issue behind me and helped support her through the hassle of moving. A few days after she left, I got a call from a mutual friend who delves into the Wiccan / metaphysical realm. She was distraught and confessed to me that shortly before Ashley's move, Ashley had come to her asking for a fertility spell. This friend didn't feel comfortable about it and refused. When pushed, she said she cast a spell for a healthy and honest relationship, but told Ashley it was for fertility. As you can imagine, I was livid. I messaged Ashley, confronting her about what I learned, and she laughed it off as she was desperate, but magic is fake anyway. So what's the harm? She then let it slip that since Chris was planning on getting a vasectomy in a few months, she had poked holes in their condoms as a last-ditch effort. At that point, I couldn't stay silent. I gathered up screenshots of all the conversations over the last few months and sent them to Chris. He understandably freaked out and kicked her out. Now, Ashley hates me because she was kicked out after a huge move and didn't have a job or money to make it back. She said I'm a terrible person for putting her and her kids out on the street. My apartment complex didn't do traditional trick or treating on Halloween. Residents were advised to set out pre-packaged individual candy bags on their patios / front door areas if they wanted to participate, but the traditional knock on door, physically hand strangers candy was not permitted. So, Halloween comes and the kids are all dressed up and each building has a scheduled time where the kids go door to door. I ended up having to work late, so my neighbor offered to walk my kids around with hers at our building's scheduled time. About 45 minutes later my kids came home with a small bucket of candy. 6 little goodie bags each from individual apartments that participated. Everything was fine. And my kids didn't say anything weird had happened. They were just excited to eat candy once they got home. The next day I took my kids to the park directly across from our apartment complex. My neighbor was there with her kids as well. The kids were playing and she took out one of those individual goodie bags with candy in it from her purse and started to loudly rummage in it. She ate several pieces of candy and my daughter eventually noticed. Ran up and asked if she could have a piece, and my neighbor responded, "Nope, this is my tax candy. Remember that this was my reward for taking you trick or treating last night." I was a little weirded out by that statement and asked what she meant. She said that since she is the one who had to take the kids out, she took 5 bags from each of my kids as a tax. Her son then chimes in and said, "You only took 2 bags from us." She responded with, "But I'm your mom. I was doing OP a favor so they get a higher candy tax." I was thinking about how to respond when I noticed that she was holding a Starburst candy and decided to just smile and nod and go back to watching my kids. I let her continue to finish off the bag of candy and then said, "Hey, aren't you vegan? You know a lot of those candies are made with animal products, right?" I explained what gelatin was and how a lot of those candies are made with it. She was horrified, Googles it, and then told her kids that they were leaving. She said something about how she was going to be sick and stormed off. Now she's giving me dirty looks every time we see her and won't let her kids play if she shows up at the park and we are there. My husband thinks I'm an asshole cause I should have either not said anything about the gelatin or said something right away when I noticed. I don't think it's my job to tell a vegan what is and isn't vegan though, and she deserved it for stealing candy from little kids. When we got home from the park after the gelatin incident, I sat my kids down and asked why they didn't tell me that the neighbor took half of their candy. My oldest kid is 6 and my youngest kid is 4. 6-year-old explained that as they went door to door during their designated trick-or-treating time, she would have my 4-year-old grab 2 bags instead of 1 from each apartment for the majority of them. She explained it to my kids that they were grabbing extra bags for her to be handed over at the end as taxation. So either freaking way she was directly taking candy from my kids or taking candy from other kids through mine. As for the authenticity of her vegan sim, I may have exaggerated when I said super vegan when I first posted this. She claims to be vegan and is very in people's faces about the benefits etc. It's 100% about the health side. She brags about veganism curing cancer, diabetes, even some mental health issues. I have never once heard her talk about the benefits for animals. She also sells herbal tea products, customized gym clothing etc. so she totes a pretty big vegan lifestyle. If that makes sense. Now for the gelatin. She knows what gelatin is, she knows what it's made out of, she knows that there are obvious things that she can't eat. But she had no idea that a lot of candy specifically had gelatin apparently. When I told her that they had gelatin in it, she knew what gelatin was but Googled the candies to see if I was correct. I think she is either really dumb or she eats non-vegan stuff all the time when no one's watching, and had to pretend to be horrified about it at this point. Cause a lot of you guys have pointed out that you literally can't be vegan and not know these things. I'm not vegan, I'm not even freaking vegetarian, and I know these things. My brother lost his job along with all his savings several months ago, and soon after he asked me if it would be okay if he and his wife stayed with me until they could afford their own place again. I hesitated at first, considering I only have a 1-bedroom apartment, but according to them they had no other options, so of course I invited them over and bought a blow-up mattress for the living room. For the first month things were manageable, although admittedly cramped. Then my brother told me that sleeping on the mattress was giving him back pains. So he asked if he could buy a small double bed for the living room. The living room is by far the biggest room I have, so I told him that would be fine as long as there was still room for my couch, TV, bookshelves. The living room is also connected to my kitchen in an open plan style. So I reminded my brother to leave walking space around the bed. It's now been 2 months and things have gotten a lot worse. When they first moved in, I would still use the living room every day to unwind on the couch after work. Now whenever I go in, there's a strange vibe like I'm intruding. My brother and his wife are often sitting in bed together when I go in. I always knock and stare at me pointedly until I leave. Sometimes when I sit down they will directly ask me for some alone time and say they would like the room to themselves. This came to a head yesterday when my sister-in-law messaged me with a timetable she'd made of when it would be a good time for me to use the living room. The timetable basically says that they will allow me into the room for an hour each evening, plus 20 minutes around meal times. I basically shut her down instantly and told her there was no way I'd be following the timetable since in the end it's my apartment. She sent me back a huge message with a dozen paragraphs about how my constant presence was ruining her marriage with my brother and they feel like they have no privacy. I tried to talk this over with my brother that night, but when I got home neither my brother //SIL were talking to me. So he's clearly just as pissed. Today an Amazon parcel arrived for my brother with a lock for the living room door, which I told him there's absolutely no way I will allow him to install. My brother says I'm creepy for wanting constant access to where they sleep and he's insisting on installing the lock anyway. The last year and a half has been hard for me, to say the least. Last March, my brilliant and hilarious and beautiful girlfriend Natalie suddenly passed away. Everyone always gave shit about us because of politics. We met in college when we were poli-sci majors. She is very liberal, think AOC, and I'm pretty conservative. We actually met because we were serving as treasurers for our school's college Democrats and Young Republicans clubs, respectively. And our groups would get together for drinks or bowling or laser tag once a month. Well, Natalie and I bonded over a lot of shared interests and we hit it off. Even if we didn't see eye to eye on many issues, debating her was stimulating and formed the cornerstone of our relationship. We've had debates that went on until dawn. We just bounced off each other. She liked to joke that we were drift compatible. I wanted to marry this woman, but she passed away before we got a chance to talk about marriage. I'm in therapy and I'm working through not having her in my life anymore, but it's been rough. Then Rona happened and I got laid off, so I had to move back in with my parents and figure out what I am supposed to do now. My parents mean well, but they got married really young and are more conservative and religious than me. They've been trying to set me up on dates with single girls from their church since I moved back home. But I don't want to date these girls. No offense to them, but it's a small town in the American breadbasket. They don't share the same interests as me and it feels like their only goal in life is to be a good Christian wife and produce a lot of babies. Trying to talk to them about current events is excruciating for me. The girls my parents tried to set me up with take everything they read on Facebook or hear from Fox News for face value. It makes me miss Natalie and our debates more. My parents mean well. I know they want me to find a nice girl and settle down with her, but not like this. They are nothing like Natalie and never will be. I miss her, even if my folks didn't like her ideas. But when I told them the other night that I wanted them to stop setting me up on dates with these girls, they freaked out and told me that I needed to consider settling down since I just turned 30. They're good girls from great families, I know that, and my parents like them more than they liked Natalie, but she was my one and only. I don't think it's fair for anyone when I still love her. They are even more angry at me because I told them that I just don't see myself getting married anytime soon. But like I said, Natalie was my soulmate and I just can't see myself being with anyone else but her. Yet, they are insisting that I need to find a woman and settle down and give them grandchildren. We were seriously close to talking about marriage. But around the time she died, it was more like how funny it would be if the bridal party wore blue and the groomsmen wore red because the bride is a Democrat, and the groom is a Republican / Romeo and Juliet deal. I wish we got to do that. Natalie thought it was hilarious.